beautiful, and welcome to another Joyfully Ever After Through the Looking Glass convo with yours truly, Heidi Esther. I am a storyteller and joy coach. I know it's like every time I change my designations because I am evolving human and figuring out how to help most. So, for those who give so much of ourselves, yourselves, parents out there, and are dedicated to helping others and are done with being too busy and tired. So, I am here to walk alongside you to identify all those blocks, uncover all those blocks in your heart so you can find more happiness in your life. So, all right, how do I do this? Through my mama who's walked through fire stories, decades of success in professional relationship building career, also otherwise known as fundraising, and my peculiar genius of seeing the steps you need to create the life you adore, I will walk with you to joy. Think of me kind of like Mr. Rogers for people pleasers who loves chocolate chip cookies. All right. So if you are if you are a parent or a world changer or someone dedicating your life to others who also wants to be a relaxed, happy person with a fulfilling life, then welcome to your Joyfully Ever After. All right. So today is a Through the Looking Glass conversation. So what are those? Okay. So these are conversations with different kinds of teachers like this, a beautiful human next to me. And I'm sorry, I got my I always get like the pointing of the finger wrong. Anyway, the mirroring really is a challenge for me, I guess, in the way my brain was created. Looking Glass conversations are tools with different kinds of teachers who, so that you can use the tool to understand yourself better. So we're gonna have tools up in the new year. Like, what are we doing? We're doing acupuncture in the new year, and we're gonna do yoga in the new year. We've done astrology and the enneagram. So kind of just like you grew up and you figured out, like, how do I learn best? Do I like to, do all the worksheets in class, or do I like to like talk with the teacher and monopolize their attention? Or do you just like scrape your knees trying to climb the trees, right? We all got different ways to learn. So we got tools to help you figure out, right, those internal heart blocks. And I am here to bring you all this different tools. And so the amazing thing, that's why I call it Through Looking Glass, is I bring you these tools, and they're kind of like mirrors to see yourself through different angles. So you can best learn how to see you and your power and your beauty, your weird, peculiar genius, and your joy. Okay. Enough from Heidi Esther. So today, I am very grateful to be sharing space with a bright soul who is on her own journey to joy and has a new tool to share. And I have the pleasure of introducing Jennifer Erwin. Yay! I call her a heart-centered, soulful warrior. I don't know if she would call herself that, but that's what I know of her so far. And we're going to talk about the tool of self-compassion. So people might be like, that's not a tool. That's like something that you do. But there's so many different, self-compassion has been so powerfully integrative into every day that I move forward as an authentic human being, that I think, so I'm sorry if you hear a bark. My dog is being peppy pants, and I might have to let him upstairs at some point, but for now we're just going to let it go. Anyway, yes. So whether you are live here or in the replay, please make comments below. Let us know how you're doing. Send us your questions, and I will get in touch with Jennifer and make sure she answers them or I answer them. And so we can get the party started. All right. So I am going to introduce you, Jennifer, and we can get this going. So Jennifer is a professional life coach with expertise in serving physicians and others in caregiving positions. So she specifically supports women in decreasing burnout and increasing well-being through an evidence-based coaching model, as well as through her online self-compassion programs. And she is just wrapping up an awesome, beautiful, luscious group coaching, and maybe she can share a little bit about what that's all about today. She has a degree in psychology and a master's in education, as well as advanced training in nonviolent communication, positive psychology, mindfulness, and self-compassion. Jennifer has done a lot of learning, and now she's doing the acting. She's walking through all the steps. She is passionate about helping women grow their confidence and life satisfaction through taming the inner critic. And don't we all have an inner critic or an inner committee? I like to say I used to have an inner committee. So like I had my internal, like my mom's voice, and then I had my boss's voice, and then I'd have my own spicy voice. Okay. And she helps women develop an unshakable sense of trust in themselves. Oh, I love that. And you get that trust through, I bet, one of the tools you can use is self-compassion. So, Jennifer, fill in the blanks. What did I miss? Tell us more, like about you. You could say, like kind of what inspired you to go on this path, and stay on this path, or all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, thank you for that intro. Yeah, so I am a life coach, and it has kind of, I think it was always my probably mission or like path to get there, because I've been a personal development junkie for like since I was 10.
Yay!
Yeah, I think I'm like just nearing 40, and I think I'm like have always been this age. Like I think like I was drawn to like Sarah Ban Brethanock and like Simple Abundance and things like that at a very young age, and like did gratitude journaling. And that, like the self-help section of the bookstore is like the place that I hang out.
Yeah, I'm feeling you there.
Yeah. So that's been kind of my path. And I did a lot of other things before I landed in coaching, but definitely this is like what fills me up, and what I think my unique genius really like is best suited for. A little more, I am a mama, and I also homeschool, and I'm an entrepreneur. And so there's like a whole lot of, and I'm a high achiever too. So there's just a lot. I have my inner committee. I've got my people pleaser and my perfectionist and my high achiever and my worry wart. Yeah. I resonate
all in
with
there.
that. All in there. And
all
so
in there.
I love helping people kind of identify their different parts and like find that centered, loving space where we can be both like kind and firm with ourselves, so we can like get on with living.
Yeah, I love that. And even with all those different hats, right? So many of us wear so many different hats. And it's not like we're just going to quit everything and that's where the happiness is, right? So the happiness is inside of all that, right?
Yeah.
Inside of and finding that like that balance between like, all right, there's parts of me that want to be that love being overachiever and want to get it mostly right, and that want to love on everybody, and like, oh, by the way, I want to also eat and sleep, right?
Yeah.
And so like finding that balance. And it sounds like you talk from a very relaxed, chill perspective, because you have in that, right? You're talking with all those different pieces and not saying like you're all voted off the island and only one of you can stay. But there's so many different pieces of ourselves.
Right. Yeah, all these different parts, and how to really like just be with them. How do we be with these different parts that are sometimes difficult?
I love that. I think of my different parts a lot in terms of a time order. And so like I'm always working on loving and reconciling my different past selves with my present self, like loving on the present moment, and then feeding my future self, right? And so like every day I'm like, I need to do something that like reconciles, like gets all three like kind of in flow. We're all like, let's all be on the same team. Let's not like, let's not waste all of our energy on like regret, and the past self's like just beating me with a hammer. And then my present self is like, sorry, no time for present. We have to figure out what's going to be on the dinner table tomorrow. Right. Yeah. And so just constantly I totally.
Yeah. Yep. Oh. Yep. Inner dialogue, inner peaceful dialogue. That's key.
Yeah. So the first thing I always ask my guests after the intro is, how are you and how are you taking care of yourself today?
Yeah, such a great question. I am doing well today. And which is good, right? Even I didn't get a lot of sleep last night, but I'm still feeling centered. I must just maybe don't need as much, but I have started this habit just the past week of before I make my first cup of, Earl Grey tea is just filling my teacup like half full of water and making sure I drink that before, just to kind of like start my day. I was trying to do like this again, overachiever perfectionism, like hot water and lemon or ginger tea or whatever. And I was like, you know what? Like my goal is to just like nourish and hydrate my body. So I'm just going to do like, what's the easiest step? So easy to get my teacup already out, put some water in it, just drink it. Like, and no big steps, something simple.
I love that. I love that. I had so we have for those of you who don't know, I met Jennifer through Heather Cox from the Live with Heidi and Heather show. And Heather actually turned me onto a daily water intake habit. And I have been a migraine sufferer most of my adult life, or I guess I should say all of my adult life and some of my kid life. And she's just like, oh, we drink like 80 ounces of water a day. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of water. And I was like, all right, I'm going to do this. And so like I tried doing like the large amount of water, and I was like squeezing lemons, and I don't have like a professional squeezy thing for my juice. And so I'm just like, and then sometimes I used to bite my nails, but now I have a whole new like respect for my hands. I call them $1 million hands. And anyway, that's a whole story. But anyway, so then it was hurting my hands, and I was like, what can I do? And I was like, oh, so now every day I get up and I just drink like a cup of water. I don't know. It's not 80. It's probably like 16 or 20 ounces or something. And then over lunch, I'm like, sometimes I'm thirsty and I drink a whole other one. So it's just like everything with a habit, right? Figure out what works for them. Because some people carry around like a gallon jug, and they're like, I'm going to sip this all day. And I was like, there's no way I could like know thyself. I was like, there's no way that I'm just going to be looking at that. And it's going to be like 8 p.m. and I'm going to be looking at like, oh, I have to drink like 12 hours of water right now. So I was like, that's not going to work for me. So I just get up and before I get out of bed, I meditate, which is how I take care of myself every morning. And then I drink my cup of water.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Those morning habits really make a difference, right?
Yeah.
Keep it small and know what works. Yeah. Find what works.
Yeah. And just keep trying, right? Keep trying. Like I call it, so my 3 words for the next 3 years, I can't just do one word because I'm not built that way. And 1 year seems too short for me because I don't know. And so I have compassionate, aligned action. So I'm still not giving myself a hard time, and I'm still trying to do stuff that works with me, not against me, and still taking steps. Right.
Yeah.
So
beautiful words.
Those are, I have on my desk. Well, actually I have a blanket on my desk because I like cuddly things and it's weird, but even my desk has a blankie. But under my binky, I have my vision board for the next 3 years. So it has the three words are like completely circling all the pictures in the different spheres of my life. So anyway, okay. So I want to have a whole discussion. Let's jump on in to self-compassion. So there's a lot of different words out there. There's gratitude, and there's all sorts of other words that you could use to hone in on to help people with. So why self-compassion?
Yeah. Why this tool? Why this topic?
Yeah. Why this?
Yeah, I think for me personally, this is like the cornerstone. It's like the missing key. Like I said, I've been like a personal development junkie, and I love like learning new tools and like trying different things out. And what I found is that no matter what I did for a really long time, until I fostered self-compassion, anything that actually might have worked for me wasn't sticky enough, because I was spending all of this time and energy like either judging myself for how well I was or wasn't doing a certain thing, right? Or it was just not, I was setting myself up for like this huge, talk about perfectionism, like bar of success. And so when I didn't meet that, I was like, oh, this isn't working for me. Like, to even be able to discern what's that aligned action for you, you need to have a safe space inside yourself where you can like hold your truth, where it's safe to just feel whatever you're feeling and to know that you've got your own back. To me, those are like a lot of things that I've done in the past, like even meditation, I
Mhm.
would like strive really hard to meditate really well and then would blame myself when my mind wandered. And so adding in that element of compassion, of self-compassion, of turning towards myself just softens everything. And it made my meditation practice enjoyable. Where
Oh,
before I
I
was
love
just
that.
like powering through. And there's so many things like that that I find that like it's so much easier to maintain a practice of any kind when you've got your own back with
So, like,
self-compassion.
so it moves you away from the checking of the box to the, "Is this work for me?" Alright, that's my dog. I'm gonna be right back, and, I'm gonna go put
Let
him
'em out.
upstairs. Alright, sorry about that. My dog gets really excited when I do lives. I think he just, like, wants to be part of the conversation.
Yeah, he probably has lots to say about
Yeah,
self-compassion.
yeah, he's like, "I'm an anxious, nervous wreck, and, like, I could use some self-compassion right now."
Mhm.
So, alright. Yes, that is so important to be able to put them in. And one thing when you were talking about it, so next week on my show, I'm talking about how to painlessly learn from mistakes.
Ah. Mm.
Yes, yes, because I had this discussion with someone. They're like, it's not possible. You make a
Mm.
mistake and then you feel crappy. So I've gotten to a point in my life through my personal development journey that I don't feel that pain anymore.
Mm.
So I've done a reframe. Like I've reframed mistakes to what is the universe teaching me in this moment.
Mm.
And so a big part of that, and I want to ask you this question is what part does the like how have you had to resolve your relationship with your ego to be able to bring in self-compassion? Are they completely separate?
Mm.
Are they did because I've had to work with like my training on like my relationship with my ego to be able to invite self-compassion in. I didn't know if that was part of your journey also.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't I think I don't know if I've like kind of like have a relationship with the word ego actually. I mean, I definitely have different parts of me that I can see are like sometimes tragic in the way that they're trying to protect or serve me, that they don't serve my highest good. So I guess in that way, I mean, like those are the parts. And I do feel like discernment has been the biggest key of like knowing which voice is which,
I love
you
that.
know?
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
ego would be a big part of the pieces of you that are like the more perfectionistic part or
Hmm.
the overachiever, the one that wants to get like all the certificates and all the awards and 100% and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that those are ones that like are always to me, I like viewing them as parts that were doing their job at some point and that are like we've outgrown them. Like they were really doing their best with what they had at the time to make sense of our situation with the
Mhm.
state that our brains were in, which is usually under construction as children, right? And
Mhm.
so they grew out of that and yet they're like not caught up quite with like, oh, I'm an adult and I'm like surviving on my own and I actually have a lot of good tools and they're just still really loud. And so it's like, how do you build up that relationship and like discern like, oh, is that a voice that was like useful at one point and I can like find that inner wisdom. So to me, it's like there's a framework that I use. It's from Shirzad Shamin. He talks about positive intelligence, but he kind of frames them as saboteurs because they tend to self sabotage us
Oh
versus
yeah,
our
for
sage
sure.
brain, which is like inner wisdom, you know, that true higher self, I think of it as, you know, and so having kind of a distinction and knowing like what voice is this or what part of me is this that's talking.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah, a lot of us like we have those parts that were developed first, right? That kept us safe and
Hmm.
kept us in line. Like and sometimes they're close to. So I grew up in a pretty traditional family, I would say, and my brothers all played football and I was a
Mm.
cheerleader. And but that like, so I learned to be the cheerleader in many different situations because that's what was like the gender norm and expected of me. But also as I've learned, like, the inner cheerleader, like, that's part of who I am as a person.
Mm,
And so I need to like have that right discernment of like, am I just being like overly like I've developed an overly optimistic
mm,
shell to candy coat situations, but also I am an encourager, so I do like to see the positive side of things,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so like having that discernment, like, is this helping or hurt? Like, is this small
Mm,
part of me that has been with me since I was very, very young? Like, she's still kind of active in play sometimes. And so is she
yeah.
helping or hurting me?
Yeah, and I think that it's like whenever it kinda turns sour, it's like those skills, like people pleasing, it means you have a lot of empathy and a lot of care, like that's part of that skill set and part of that piece of it. But when it becomes that over, it's like there's like a line there that we kinda have to learn, like, "Oh, wait, that's crossing over into like overtaking responsibility," or it's actually like a form of control, like you talk about,
Yeah.
it's like where is that line to like I can
Mm,
feel deeply with other people and I can see their pain and what a gift that can be as a tool in my relationships, and where does it become harmful both to ourselves and
yeah.
I would argue to other people.
Yeah. Yeah, I would
Yeah.
definitely say, that is something like I love that you said control because there's so many different ways that we all learn to try to control such things that aren't, you know, are uncomfortable or are completely out of our control. And,
Mhm.
one of my old mechanisms would be like, all right, I'm just gonna be like the Pollyanna lady.
Mm.
And and because that was something that I learned. So now I can say like, this is what do I want my outcome to be, and like, and I bring a much more realistic. I view myself as like
Yeah.
an optimistic realist.
Hmm.
I don't,
Yeah.
I don't know, versus just like everything's gonna be fine. Now I can be like, shit ain't fine right now. There's a
Yeah.
pandemic and people dying. It's not good.
Yeah.
So everyone's
Yeah.
having a learning moment. I'm used to having lots of learning moments. So pandemic was like another break from which I could see my life from a different angle, and I was
Mm.
able to work with it and capitalize on it and move into like my soul-centered, heart-centered career. But not a lot of people have had a lot of learning moments. So it was really,
Yeah.
really hard
Yeah. Yeah.
for
It is,
people.
and it's hard. To me, that's where self-compassion comes in because unless you have that safety to hold the wholeness
Mm,
of like both the joy and the like the positive side of things and the reality that life is 50-50, like you don't everyone has struggle and strife and challenge and
mhm.
difficult emotions, like that's part of it. And to me that's what the tool of self-compassion does, is it gives us the tools to be able to be like, oh, this uncomfortable thing that I only know how to push away or move away from, I now have the tools to be able to be with it, learn anything from it that might be learned, or to just like let it be and give myself kindness for having a hard emotion. Like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, this is just a hard moment. Can I give myself care for that? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I so resonate with this. And when I was doing some prep work for this conversation, there was a recurrent question that kept popping up.
Mm,
And this is a question, this would be an old question, like something from a long time ago. And so some people might have this same question, like, can you won't learn anything if you're easy on yourself.
mhm,
Why do so how do you work with that? And so now obviously I've done a reframe, and I bring compassion as one of my words,
mm.
for life and living as is yours, but like what is the reframe that has to happen between like, oh, compassion is just like you're going easy on yourself and you just
Mhm.
like don't want to push yourself hard.
Yeah. Yeah. This is like one of those biggest ones.
Yeah.
So like Kristen Neff, who's like the researcher and the one who's really brought self-compassion kind of out into the forefront, she talks a lot about the different myths around self-compassion because they
Mm,
get confused with different things. And one of the biggest fears that people have around like even the word self-compassion, self anything, right, is that it's going to
yeah.
make you complacent, because most of us use those negative like ways to like motivate ourselves. So we use fear or worry or anxiety. And it's hard because it works up to a point. It's like it feels real because
Because it's hard, right? It's hard. We had to overcome all of this, like, punching of ourselves internally, right? And probably externally
mhm,
to get to that. So therefore it must be worthwhile.
yeah,
So another myth would be like, oh, so it can't be real if it's easy and
right.
if we were nice to ourselves.
Right. That's
And
another
it's
belief
not
that
real.
like it's just not going to work or it's not going to be seen as worthwhile to myself or to others, right? Yeah. I like that analogy of the like coal-fired train versus the electric train. So like when we are kind to ourselves, kind but firm, that's what true self-compassion is. It's like an electric train. Like it gets you there too. You actually feel motivated when you're like kind and loving to yourself and you like get to the destination, but you don't cause all the pollution. Like a coal-fired plant, like fear, worry, anxiety often will get you wherever success, like will get you through grad school or whatever, but it causes a lot of pollution. There's a lot of stuff that lands in our bodies and it just doesn't work as well.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, that's another one that she talks about that really resonated. And so like I was telling my group in my self-compassion class about the other morning. It was like about 2 months ago. I woke up and I recognized both those voices inside of myself. So I don't know if anyone else, I'm sure, resonates with how hard it is, especially in the winter, to get up. But when you have things
Oh
to
yeah.
do, so that alarm went off, and I had like the first thought was like, oh my gosh, you got to get out of bed. Like that pushing negative, like you're so lazy, you just need to get up. And in the
Mhm.
past, that would have gotten me out of bed, but it might have like polluted the rest of my day versus self-compassion, which is
Yeah.
what I could tune into now, was like, oh my gosh, dear one, it is winter and it is cold and it is 5:50 a.m. Of course it's hard to get out of this warm, snuggly bed, but you have these things that are important to you that you want to
Mm.
get up out of bed for. And it was just such a gentle, like loving pull out of bed rather than that
Yeah.
forceful push. And that's the difference, is that both got me
I
out of
love that.
bed, you
Yeah.
know? Like both can motivate you, but it's like, you know, when you yell at your child who's like just struggled and you make them feel like crap, like they're not going to want to do better. When you feel worse,
Yeah. Or
you
they're
don't
not
feel
gonna,
better.
right? As a parent, they're
Yeah.
not gonna wanna tell you about stuff in the future if you just
Yeah.
kinda be like, "Why aren't you doing this? What's going on with you?"
Yeah.
And if you take a more compassionate approach and you'd be like, "Hey, what's going on? How
Yeah.
are you doing today?" Like, my kids don't like it, but we often talk about how we taking care of ourselves
Mhm.
today, like, one thing we're grateful for, one struggle we had,
Yeah.
so that, like, create that safe, right, that safe container,
Yeah.
and yeah. So that's a good segue. So can you tell a little bit about the self-compassion group that you are facilitating right now? I assume this is not just a one and done thing, that you're going to be facilitating other small groups that talk about self. Can you tell me a little bit about what it's about and like what kinds of what kinds of problems you are solving, I guess, to get
Mm.
people in the groups? Like, yeah, how are you helping people in the realm of self-compassion?
Yeah. So these skills, like, it's not easy. Like, you could just say, be nice to yourself, but like for me, it took years for me to like even recognize what that inner compassionate voice sounds like. It's much
Mhm.
quieter and it's not trained in us. We don't have any like mind training like through school. Like, we get
Mhm.
so much other training, but we don't get like, how do we take care of our minds? How do we take care of our like hearts? And how do we like be with our emotions? So I feel like so the course itself is it's a 9-week course the curriculum is developed by Kristen Neff and Christopher Germer, who are like the rock stars in the self-compassion world, but they've designed this class, and then is facilitated by teachers like myself. And I have a brilliant co-teacher as well. And we really just support people in learning like what is mindful self-compassion, what are the different components between mindfulness and self-compassion, what are those nuances, and then lots and lots of tools, because it just, like anything, it takes practice. So there's lots of different practices in there because everyone's different. And
Mm.
so you need lots of things. Like, the whole push behind in the program is to become your own best teacher. And so are asked again and again, what is working for you? Like, is this practice working for me? And if it isn't, to find something that's easier and more pleasant
Yeah, that
to
resonates.
choose. Yeah, that
Yeah.
resonates. And to give yourself permission to do that, because
Yeah.
most of us want to be good students and show up and
Mhm.
do the work, but to give yourself permission to be like, actually, that one didn't land for me right now, and to like pick another one. So having like lots of tools over the 9 weeks of different types of meditations or exercises or ways of approaching it is really helpful in terms of like giving people lots of doorways into the path and lots of things that they can then stick with and try
Mhm.
and see how it works, even if it's just for a season, because a practice might work for you for one season of your life, and then you might need to give yourself permission to change it up and find
Then you
something else.
evolve. Yeah,
Yeah,
then you evolve, and then maybe something else will, will speak to you. Do you
exactly.
have a favorite exercise, either in the course or not, that you use, like a way you check in, or a
Mm.
time of the day, or like a daily practice, or like one of those exercises that works and resonates with
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. I have a couple. So the easiest one is the self-compassion break. And so that's one that has like become like, you could do it as more of like a 5 minute formal practice, but a lot of times it's me just like, so soothing touch is something that we use a lot of finding something that's soothing or supportive, which,
Mhm.
because that releases oxytocin in our own bodies and helps us feel supported and cared for. So my favorite is just like, I probably do it all the time unconsciously now, is just put my hand over my heart. And that
Oh,
instantly helps me connect with that warmth. And then to just go through the steps of self compassion of like, what am I feeling right now? Like, what's going on? Remembering that I'm not alone, that like all humans have experiences like this, like connecting, right? And then that kindness, like, what do I need to hear right now? What do I need to do? So, like, the other day, I was like having a really hard moment. Took me a while to remember this. I sat down and I just like went through it, and I was like, I need to just take out my contacts. Like, that was like so, it was like the only kind thing I need to do for myself right now is just like get this irritation out of my eyes and like take it. It just gives me that constant wisdom of like, what do I need right now? Do I need to go outside? Do I need to just take deep breaths? Do I need to tell myself something specific? Like, I'm here for you. Like when we're feeling overwhelmed, and we need to hear like, oh, I've got your back. I'm here for you. Or just even this is hard. We just need resonance. And so having that place to land and have those really simple steps of like, what am I feeling? I'm not alone. What do I need to hear or do or say for myself that would be kind? What would I do if I was
yeah.
sitting with a friend and they were telling me this struggle? What would I
Yeah,
offer to them? And
I
then give
love
it to
that.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Now I have a really good lens to understand why, like, basically swaddle myself in blankets every day.
Yeah.
I like
You're
that's
like, this is what I needed.
Yeah, I like I in the morning, most mornings, I will wrap myself in a blanket. I will do
Yeah.
meditation laying in my bed, and then as I start my day, I will go to my desk or go to a chair, and I will wrap myself in a blanket and, like, pull up my laptop or my
Yeah.
journal, depending. And then also, like, when I'm having conversations with people, I am never, like, far away from a hot beverage. Like, today, I have
Mhm.
some nettle tea
Mm.
with me, and, yeah, so I have all sorts of herbal teas that I go to. I think that's a way of just, letting me know that I am worth of taking time for myself.
Yeah.
And so these practices, like, kinda they take, like, right, a little extra time, like finding a blankie, getting my tea ready, so but,
But
like,
not as
it's
much
worth
as we
it.
will. Like sometimes we think of self-care as like this huge overarching task. Like I need like hours to myself or book a spa or like even
Yeah.
run a bath. And it's like, could I grab a cozy blanket?
Yeah,
Can I
it's like, that
boil
was an
a pot of
extra 12
tea?
seconds today. Heidi, I don't think we have that time.
Right. Yeah, but we like make it up big in our head. Like those other parts are like we don't have time and it's just like not real. Yeah. We do have time to take care of ourselves in all those ways.
Yeah, yeah, we always have the time, and I tell my kids, like, they're teenagers, and they're really, really big on the, not sleeping, like,
Ugh,
not going to bed
yeah.
on time, and
Yeah.
so they're 15 and 16, so I pretty much, like, they go to bed when they go to bed because I go to bed first, and so sometimes in the morning, they just look like, tired. I could say other words, but tired is one of them. And so I'm just like, "Hey, man, how you gonna take care of yourself today?" And so sometimes my daughter, she would just, like, go sit in a chair and like she won't say anything, and she'll just eat her breakfast. Like she'll be in the living room just eating breakfast, and she's giving herself a
Yeah.
little TLC. So we all got our different ways, right?
Right.
We can develop those habits so that we're not like, bum rushing our days and, as like an angry bull.
Yeah. Yeah.
An angry, tired bull in a china shop.
Yeah.
Like, no, I can just go hang out in the pasture and still get my stuff done, still do my
Yeah.
bull things, whatever they are.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We
Yeah.
power through so often. It's really hard to stop. And we can give ourselves compassion for that too. Like,
Mm,
gosh, it's really hard to stop in our busy world where like everyone's going, and there's this competitive spirit around who's most tired or most stressed out or whatever.
mhm.
It is radical, and it's sometimes hard to do that. So
Yeah, I
even
feel
giving
like
ourselves
we
compassion
yeah.
for when it's hard to give ourselves self-compassion.
Right, and it's like a big cycle of
Yeah.
self-care.
And then it's easier. Yeah.
Yeah, totally, totally. Oh, so it seems like I don't know, I feel like self-compassion has helped me open the door to
Mm,
many things in my life. And do you have I'm just curious if you have a story. um so I would have welcomed self-compassion into my life during my divorce. So that would
mm,
been about a dozen years ago. And before then, I remember there's this moment that things got lighter.
mm.
And before then, things were pretty dark because I have an unchecked committee in my head that
Yeah.
like I'm ruining my kids' lives
Mm,
and like they're not going to get as many presents. I know this is so they're not going to get as many
yeah.
presents for Christmas or their birthday, and how could I do that to them? And
Mm,
so but there was this line, like I was starting to do a lot of reading. There was this line, and so after I didn't even know it was self compassion. After I adopted this one phrase, I was able to move forward. So it was like the key that unlocks, right?
mm.
Becoming the teacher, right? Figuring out how you're the best learner and the best teacher. So if you move into that self-compassion, you can give yourself the permission
Yeah.
to, try. So I have a story. Um so it would have been like a year. I was looking at my calendar and I had just flipped it to like a November,
Mm,
and lot of mommy perfection around Christmas and have to do it right and have all the parties,
mm,
and looking at a whole new season of not having half as much income, and so all these things like playing up against. And I remember just staring at this calendar page, and it's like November, and November is usually like I was starting to get into gratitude, and so November is like a happy time. 'Cause I was like, "Oh, November is a time where I can think about things I'm grateful for," and it took a few years for it to, like, transform to my whole life, but November was the month. I was like,
It's the
"Oh,
time.
November's, like, kitschy theme is gratitude." But it was the only, like I think it was the only heart-centered time in my life for a long time, that
Yeah.
I knew, like, of something to be gentle with myself. Anyway, so there was, like, an animal on this calendar, and I was, like, looking at it, and there's this cute little buffalo on this prairie, probably by Yellowstone area, and it was like, "Treat yourself as a friend." And I was like
Mm.
and so, yeah, I do, I got a lot of voices in my head, and one of them, I guess, was buffalo that day. And, and so I had, been doing pastoral care, before I did therapy, and so then I was like, "Oh, I guess maybe, well, like, how would I treat myself as a friend during this period of time when I'm going through this crazy divorce thing, and try not to be ashamed that I found out I was gay, like, well after having children,
Mm.
right? And all that stuff coming up, and with the whole Christmas thing." And so I think that was a defining moment for me, just like looking at that calendar page and saying, all right, I'm going to try to figure out how to treat myself as a friend. And when I get out of that mode, I'm going to move myself back into treating myself as a friend. So I didn't quite
Mm.
have the word. I didn't know the compassion is what I was giving myself, but I was like, if I'm going to have a lot of friends, I want to, because I know now, like, you attract what you do.
Mm.
And so now I give myself a lot of compassion. I'm surrounded by people who have a lot of compassion. because of that. But the opposite can be true. If you're really harsh, you can attract people who are equally harsh. So you keep yourself in the same situation either way.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if you also had a story of like the compassion in action. And,
Mm,
like if you have a pivotal story or just a more
yeah.
recent story.
Yeah. Well, I love yours. I'm just echoing that. Like, that's such a helpful perspective to take, because we are so much kinder to others generally. Like, if anyone, like, I'm guessing, who's listening or is like struggling with any of these things, it's usually because you're showing up in like beautiful, brilliant ways for other people. And it's like, we sometimes need that. Like, we're like too close to ourselves. And so we need to be able to step back and be like, what would my friends say to me? And if my friend was here, what would I say to them? You know, we need that almost like outer perspective to be able to make the shift. So I love that. Like, what would a friend say? What would I say? Such a good line to start that process of thinking that through. Yeah. I'm trying to think. I mean, I use self-compassion. I'm trying to think if there's been like a pivotal time where, to me, I have been on this journey for so long, and it like feels like kind of like a gradual sinking in of like kind of accepting
Hmm.
things. Like, there's been a lot of moments of like recognizing, I'm trying to think what, like a really clear one. I've had a lot in like even just the past 2 years where I'm like, oh, like, I'm okay with me. Like even getting on something like this, like 2 years ago, like an interview or any sort of presentation, I would be so amped up and so anxious and so like nervous. And then afterwards, I would have like this whole rigmarole afterwards of like, what did I say? You know, all that like rumination that would go on of like, why did I say that stupid thing? And now that's out there. And what if people judge me? And, you know, because there's no
Yeah.
landing spot, you know, it's just all the voices. And today, it's not that I don't feel anxious, because I had anxiety before we got on, and I have anxiety before I teach a class, but I just know that I'm okay, even though I'm anxious, and that it's like,
Mm.
there's just a whole different level of self-talk around it, because I'm like, oh, that's right. I'm going to be there for myself at the end of this, and I'm going to be with myself through the anxious feeling. And I know that I'm still here, and anxiety isn't going to like take over, or, that perfectionist part isn't going to take over, because I know I'm going to be at home with myself
Hmm.
before, during, and after. So there's a lot of, I mean, I'm still a work in progress, and there's still lots, it's life
As we
work.
all are.
This
Yeah.
is like life
Yeah.
work. So it's not like you get to some destination, you're like, I've got it all figured out. Like, I'm
Whoop, whoop.
always compassionate with myself now. No, I forget all the time. But more and more, you just like have that easier cycle to be like, even last night, my son was having a meltdown over something. I was tired. I was trying to cook dinner. And I was like, this is a moment for self-compassion. Like, this is hard for me. Like, he was
That's
having a
a
hard
lot.
moment, but I was
Yeah.
like, this is hard for me. Can I just sit and I took like 3 deep breaths. It's just even that reminder to like do that. In the past, it would just be like, why is he crying? Like, judging him, judging myself,
For like
judging the
not making
situation.
him like, why aren't you figuring out why, why he's crying?
Yeah.
Why can't you stop him crying? Can't
Or even,
control.
why can't I go sit down and be with him and be fully present? Like,
Right.
I couldn't in that moment. I needed
Yeah.
compassion first for
Mhm.
myself to like rest with that. And he's okay.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a bad mom for
Yeah.
pausing and taking a couple breaths before I try
Yeah.
and empathize with him. Like, it's weird, those, the stories that we end up telling ourselves about what it
Yeah. Like
has to be.
how we're socialized to just like keep doing all the things all the time, no matter what. Like my
Yeah.
parents would always say, like, shields up, time to go to work. Let's do this. And like workaholism is a normal word in my family.
Yeah.
And now I can be like, I can decide something. I can make a decision to decide that dinner can be at 5:10 or 5:15. It doesn't have to be at
Mhm.
5:00 every day.
Yeah.
And then my daughter gets hangry and I'm like, "Honey, have a granola bar. It's gonna be a little later." Right?
Yeah.
It's all good. I see you there. I understand hangriness. I have the same gene.
Me
Um, and
too.
I'm gonna sip some wine or something, and you're gonna have a granola bar, and we're gonna be okay.
Yeah. It like gives perspective. It's just like
Yeah.
puts you at choice, and it gives you perspective of like,
Yeah.
is it that important that it's at 5 o'clock? Right? Like we make it this big deal a lot of times in our heads. And if we don't have developed that like compassionate voice, that's like, there's a lot of stuff going on. It's
Yeah.
understandable that dinner's not going to be ready at 5 o'clock today. Just take a breath, right?
Yeah.
Take a
Oh my
sip, like
gosh.
help, just back it up. Like the
Yeah.
world will not end, right?
Yeah. And sometimes my kids are like, Mom, can we just eat on the couch? And like I have all these voices. They're like, we can't have a connective, like meaningful meal if it's on the couch. It has to be at the table. Like, where's that coming from?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like all the things that we were like, no, we can actually eat on the couch. It's not like I'm
Yeah.
gonna, I mean, sometimes we will, like if it's a weekend, we'll turn on the TV and we'll watch a movie together and eat. And that's just as connective sometimes. And that's just what we need, right?
Right.
Because we made a decision. It doesn't have to look a certain way. It allows us to have that, like that flexibility to always decide something different.
Right.
Yeah. There
Yeah.
was this I don't know why this conversation stuck in my head, but someone had told me so Jimmy Kimmel, this is totally random. Um he was going to have this very famous beautiful singer, and I want to say it was Alicia Keys, but maybe it was Rihanna. I'm not sure, on his show. And like before that, like earlier in the year, she had said, I'm not gonna wear makeup anymore because
Mm.
patriarchy, and I can do whatever, I'm not gonna wear makeup anymore to please the men. And so he was going to her dressing room like before she was coming on his show, and he was like, "So, I heard you didn't wear makeup anymore." And she's like, "I can do whatever the fuck I want." And that's so sorry if anyone, that's a F bomb there. But basically, like, you can make that decision, right? How to show up, how to take care of yourself. Like that day she wanted to wear makeup. Great. Someday
Mhm.
she doesn't want to. Great. We don't have to be like controlled by all these choices, and decisions from, past versions of ourselves and other people's wants for ourselves. We can always make that just choice to say, like, what do I need now? Do I
Mhm.
need to swaddle myself in a blanket while I make myself made up and I can go hang out with my, $1 million fans, at Jimmy Kimmel? Great.
Yeah.
We can, so it's good for, us mamas on the, on the front lines, and, it's good for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really is that place of discernment, because sometimes that's where it is. I think that's where people are like, oh, I'm just going to default to that, of like, no, cuddling up instead of getting out the door. And it's, to me, there's that discernment of like, when is it like, what do I truly need right now? Because sometimes what we truly need is to get up and go for a walk, or to like
Mm-hmm.
exercise or move our bodies, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes that's like punishment of like, oh, I should do this because like I have to like exercise, because even out of like a good motivation of like, I want to be healthy, it's not even about looks, but we can push ourselves in that place. And
So it's
sometimes we
all
need to take a nap.
the internal,
Yeah,
like, is it, is it, are you putting the coal in, or are you plugging in the train? Where
exactly.
is it
Where is
coming
it?
from?
Exactly. And it takes a lot of practice to kind of discern what voice is what. Yeah. And so to be patient with ourselves too as we learn these skills, because it isn't
Yeah.
something that's just like, oh, I'm like going to be compassionate now and it's going to be easy. Like it
Yeah.
is like there's work to like start to develop the ability to be able to discern truly, and to still
Yeah.
get it wrong sometimes,
Yeah,
you
and we're
know?
all wired so differently. Like, Heather is an enneagram coach, and
Mm,
I've been learning a lot about enneagram. And so just like one of the things that I love about self-compassion is like it will look different for every single person, because we're all wired so incredibly
right.
differently. Like, I have a friend who's an astrologer. She's like, Heidi, you're wired for the marathons, not the sprints.
Mm,
And so if you try to sprint it out, burnoutsville for you. But if you make your
yeah.
long-term goals, like, that's where my fire is. Like, I want to do the Trans-Siberian Express, right? Not literally, but like I'm wired for a nice electric train across,
Yeah.
the giant continent of Russia. Maybe I'll get there if they change their, humanitarian stuff at some point.
Yeah.
But that's beside the point. Anyway, talking about peculiar genius, let's move right along. Yeah.
Yeah, who
I've
would have known Siberian Trans Railroad? going
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we're all wired so incredibly differently.
Yeah.
And yeah, and even with Heather, like I realized, took me about a year to realize I'm a Enneagram 2 with a 3 wing. And so
Uh,
I couldn't tap into my true joy and shininess until I have all this energy around speaking. And I was like, why do I want to
mm,
be around a speaker if I'm like a mostly like a one-on-one person? Like what's going on with that? But then that's where my joy is. My joy is in the
mm,
creating and the sharing of my story in a shiny way. And so it's just like offering myself compassion, right? I need to give myself space to be the shiny 3, and I need to give my space to be the wrap around Mr. Rogersy,
mhm.
sweater wearing too, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, I'm actually wearing cardigan sweater if you're listening to this on the
I love
podcast.
it. Yeah.
So, okay. So, Jennifer, tell me about your peculiar genius. So what that means, your unique mix of talents and traits and, personality and quirks and weirdnesses and all the good stuff that make you uniquely qualified to do what you do.
Mm. Yeah, I love that question because that is another place where I think that like compassion can help because it's hard to own. Like if we're like so worried about what other people are thinking or trying to be something else that we can't really own what is true about us, and like there's so much space in just being able to like embrace I'm a cardigan loving,
Yeah, yeah, like coming
whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
embracing it and integrating it.
Yeah.
I have a whole story about my receding hairline, but this is about you.
Yeah, embracing all those parts, even the
Mhm.
parts that we're not always as happy about. Yeah,
Yeah,
truth. Yeah, so speaking of Enneagram, I'm a 4. So like embracing that. I remember
I
like
love that.
years ago when I took it, I was like, the Enneagram's not like super like warm and fuzzy. It always has like tells you like it is, in a lot of ways. It's
It's
showing
a
you where you
blade
can
of many
grow.
edges.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. And I took it and I was like, oh, like it was so me. And yet I like didn't want it to be me at the time where I was like, that's yeah, but like I read the other descriptions and I was like, maybe I could, yeah. But I'm a 4 and I've like definitely learned how to kind of embrace that, like the depth and the creativity and the like, even the melancholy moods that come along with all of that. There's gifts in that. So yeah, I think I'm a high feeling, high sensitive, deeply empathetic, kind of passionate person who's also very introverted. And has like a lot of perspective. I like learning about what's going on inside our minds. And I have deep connections around like what is like that ability to kind of zoom fully in and then kind of also step back of like zooming all the way out to kind of hold
Mm,
both of those perspectives and hold that wisdom.
I love that.
But I think what's ironic is that I have this huge capacity to like really see others and see their gifts and really be with and just provide that safe space. Like you can just be you and I can see that and it's really grounding. And it took a lot of time for me to like turn that like superpower inward towards myself because my whole life I've been getting that feedback of like, oh, but you're the person I can talk to. You're my safe space, all those things. And
Mhm.
so coming full circle to be
To
like, how do I
receive,
give
right?
that to myself? Yeah. How do I be that grounding centered safe space for me? Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. I've been doing a lot of like thinking and journaling around receiving lately,
Mm,
especially
it's a good
in
season.
yeah, like even not even as like a mom, but just in the entrepreneur land. It's like
Mm,
there's so many ways we're always taught to give.
yeah.
Give, and then, like, receiving is always so hard. I think my last email was one of my highest open ever, and it was like, "Do you have a
Mm.
hard time receiving compliments?"
Oh
That
yeah.
that was the title of my email. And,
Yeah.
like, so most people might have a hard time receiving because I know I used to have a very hard time, and this is gonna sound really silly, but on my laptop is an Apple laptop, and so there's this, like, emoji person who kinda looks like me, like, I crafted her with funky glasses, and she has, like, cool like, a little popped more hair, because my hair is a little growing out right now, but don't worry, it's getting cut soon. But she would move like a real person, like, she'd be, like,
Yeah.
looking at me and looking at me, and at first I was like, "This is kinda creepy because it's like me, a cartoon version of me looking at me," and now I can look at her and be like, good morning, beautiful. Let's conquer the world. Let's do this. But it took me receiving, right? Because I'm basically giving
Mhm.
myself a compliment. It took me a long time, like years, to
Yeah.
receive,
Yeah.
right? But once we do that, then we can be like, oh, now we can actually move forward because we're giving ourselves the compassion and all the
Mhm.
energy back, right? We're unlocking all the resistance that we were poo-pooing on ourselves for, like having receding hairlines or not having
Yeah.
nails that look like fancy model hands like our moms, or,
Yeah.
whatever. Um, and we just taking back all that energy and all that power and saying like, yeah, yeah, I'm beautiful and I'm good and we're gonna figure it out together.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And just to see that there's two sides of the same coin,
Mm,
that giving and receiving, like if you've ever given a compliment and someone's like bounced it back at you, like that doesn't feel good. Like, right? Like it feels good to give and it feels good to have someone receive that too. Like you're
yes.
giving a gift in that receiving place. And that's taken a lot of time for me to kind of like keep remembering, like, oh my gosh, every time I say thank you to someone who's giving me a compliment or I really take it in, I'm doing something between us. Like it's not just a
Yeah.
selfish
You have
thing.
a full circle exchange
Yeah,
there.
it's like that infinity sign where it's like going back
Mm,
and forth. There's energy flow instead of blockage, right? Yeah.
yeah, I love that. I remember a long time ago, I read an article about like how, and they said like the rise of the millennial generation was the rise of the people who would say, like, if you gave them a compliment, they would say, no problem. No problem. It's
No
like, thank
biggie.
you so much. You just saved my life. No problem. Like, oh my God, you just saved so many lives. You should say you're welcome.
Yeah.
Right. And so that like invites it in. Like as a member of the Gen X generation, I guess I'm proud of being like the generation that was still, working on taking in the compliments. But
Yeah.
as a mom, I've only, and a person, I've only started to really do it recently. And I'm like, I actually went through I went through a part of this past summer, and I wrote letters to me and all my different accomplishments because
Mm.
I never felt good. Like, oh, eighth grade valedictorian. Oh, you got this
Yeah.
award. Oh, nothing,
Yeah.
nothing. I always felt like, what's the next shoe to fall? What's the next thing I
Mhm.
got to do?
Yeah.
What's next? And once you really soak those in, you're also telling the universe, hey, send me more of this stuff because it's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. And it's actually like less self centered because you're honoring all the things, all the energy, all the people, all the things that made you who you are in that moment because we don't, create our accomplishments in a vacuum. So it's like honoring the whole too,
Mm,
not just because it's not about ego in terms of like, this is all about me and my accomplishments. Like when you really truly receive, you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, like I came here to this moment and I'm by saying thank you and taking it in, I'm saying thank you to everything that led me to this moment too.
ah,
It's like that's so much
yeah.
different than like, oh, it's all about me. It's like, no, like I am here and I'm interdependent with all the
I love
factors.
that. You're like
Yeah.
honoring and blessing like the
Yeah.
woven
Everything.
network of
Yeah.
the love that we, those little tiny steps and tiny bits, tiny little hugs that we give ourselves,
Yeah.
and oh, I just love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so you have a guide that you would like to share, and it's called The Perfectionistic Guide to Turning Self-Care into Radical Self-Love. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So just it was a book that I wrote. It's just an ebook, so it's super easy read with lots of practical exercises in there of when I was thinking about us when we think about perfectionism, if we struggle with that of like setting the bar so high that we can't ever reach it. And then
Mhm.
self-care becomes the same thing where it's like supposed to nourish us so that we feel like whole and, taken care of. And it can be this other thing that we're pushing ourselves to reach that then we can't achieve. So
Mhm.
really trying to use those tools of like, how do we change our mindset around it? How do we look at our perfectionism and see it for what it is? And then how do we start to build what it is to really accept ourselves as we are, which can be a really scary thing for perfectionists because you're like thinking you'll be worthy when,
Yeah.
worthy if, at some future date. And so it's really about how do we turn self-care as to moments to honor who we are, our
Mhm.
beautifully, wildly imperfect selves, like all of us, planting us
Mhm.
firmly in that ground. So it's just a
And
tool. It's a place where I'd love for people who struggle with that to just dive in and see if it can offer some insights and a couple, practical tools to start that journey, that
I love
shift.
that. I love that. I just put in the chat, because I assume people can get it at
That's
jenniferirwincoaching.com.
right.
So I put that
Mhm.
link in the chat, and so feel free
Perfect.
to
Thank you. Yeah, please
to
download.
yeah, please download it, and, it's also in the show notes if you're listening to this on the pod. And yes, so we are at the end of our time. If anybody has any questions, just pop them in there. And everyone who comes on my show, Jennifer gets an affirmation from the Snowman of Affirmations. My little glass snowman with his
Oh,
hat.
I
His
love
top
it.
hat
You
pops
get to
off.
shake him up,
Yeah,
the
I'm gonna shake
snowman.
him up. He's got green, orange, pink, and yellow affirmations. And so, do you have
Mm.
a specific color? You want me to just pull?
Just pull. I'm feeling open
Okay.
today. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Jennifer, yours is, I am patient and forgiving.
Forgiving.
That's kind of like a recipe for compassion right there. I'm just gonna
Patient and
throw
forgiving with myself and others. Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right,
Yeah.
so I am pulling a yellow one, and it is ah, this is so true. My feelings are always telling me something, so I listen.
Yeah.
So,
Mm.
and for those of you out there who are listening to the replay, I'm picking out a lovely green one for you. Ooh, this is a very
Oh, get
empowering one, and
sprinkled.
thinking about the holiday season. I deserve what I
Ah.
desire.
Mm.
So, think about your career, or, you've been really eyeing that new motorcycle or whatever. Or for me,
That's a
that's
good one. I've been actually grappling with that. I've been working on that of like desires coming up and how to like really just honor our desires as deep knowings, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
our self-guide, and I even, was thinking about, like, when I see something and it triggers my envy or my comparison, I'm like,
Mm,
there's something about me that's out of alignment that is looking at that situation saying, let's go that way."
yeah,
And so just listening to it, right? Always listening to my feelings, like, what is my everything's a teacher.
right.
What is that feeling telling me?
Yeah,
Uh,
beautiful.
all right, Jennifer, it has been fabulous
Yeah, thanks for having
chatting.
me. Yeah, so lovely. Appreciating your humor, the lightness, the like
Yeah.
fun. I like need that as a 4. Like I need to be lifted out of that sometimes. So that's been a joy.
Hey, it's all good. I got some random stories sometimes, that's for sure.
I
Like, "Oh,
love
yeah, this
it.
reminds me of a time where I jumped in the kiddie pool." No. So to get in touch with Jennifer, you could just go to jenniferlifecoaching.com and pick up that beautiful guide, as well as see all of the goodness and compassionate and beautiful resources that she brings to bear with her full
Mm,
soul and spirit and light as a magnificent human in progress in our world. So, thank you so much for being here.
thank you for
And
having me.
we'll talk to you soon. Everyone, sending you love, light, and laughter. Until next time, I'm Heidi Esther.